I have a Weber charcoal grill. It's in the backyard. I have a cover for it. But to be honest, the cover's been on it for quite a while because I haven't used it in quite a while. Because cooking on a grill, especially charcoal, is just more work. It takes more time. You have to get the coals going. I highly recommend a chimney starter. You have to get the heat right, get the grates ready. It is a process. But there's a difference between charcoal and gas. And it starts with that smell. That charcoal, that specific, that smoky, maybe a little sharp smell of charcoal burning. Gets in your clothes, maybe in your hair, it follows you inside. But that smell is so unique that when I smell a charcoal fire, it brings me right back to memories of grilling in the backyard. You know, smell is probably the most powerful memory trigger that we have. There's science behind it, that the part of the brain that processes smell connects more directly to memory and emotion than our other senses do. Which is why if you're selling your home, your realtor may tell you to put chocolate chip cookies in the oven. Or they even smell a spray that they can spray in the house. Did you know that? That smells like baked chocolate chip cookies. But not because buyers are coming in hungry necessarily, but because that smell bypasses some of our rational defenses and says at a deeper level, this smells like home. This is safe. I belong here. Think for a moment about what that smell may be for you. Maybe it's the smell of a campfire. Maybe it's the smell of your grandmother's kitchen. Maybe it's the smell of fresh baked bread. We all have smells that will instantly take us back. Bacon, yeah. Hey, I like bacon too, that's okay. Now I am getting hungry. But see, smell does that. It carries us somewhere. In our passage today, Jesus has been arrested. He's been taken to the high priest's courtyard. The disciples have scattered except for two of them. The unnamed disciple who has connections inside, and the other Simon Peter following at a distance. But a few nights earlier at the table, Peter had made Jesus a promise. Jesus told the disciples he was going somewhere they couldn't follow. And Peter pushed back the way Peter always does and says, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus looked at him. Will you lay down your life for me? Very truly I tell you, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times. Peter probably didn't believe it. I'm not sure I would have in his shoes. And we saw Peter was fearless when Jesus was arrested. But we're later in the story. It's cold and the night is dark. Jesus is inside being interrogated. Peter is outside in the courtyard. And there's a charcoal fire. The Greek word for this fire, this portable fire used often for cooking, is anthrachia. It's burning in the middle of the courtyard. The servants and the officials have made it to keep warm. And Peter, out there in the cold and the dark, drifts towards the fire. Because it's cold and the fire is warm and bright, and there's people there, there's community there, so Peter drifts in. Because when we're afraid, we move towards light and warmth and what's familiar and company. That's what we do. And that's where the telling moment happens. Standing around a perfectly ordinary charcoal fire, just trying to stay warm, a woman looks at Peter and says, "You're one of his disciples, aren't you?" And Peter says no. And he's asked again and again. 3 times he's asked at the fire, and 3 times Peter says he doesn't know Jesus. And then the rooster crows. And I imagine Peter standing there, staring into the coals, into the flames, the smell of charcoal smoke in his clothes, and he realized that he did just as Jesus said he would. John just moves on with the story. But I think some of us I know what it feels like to stand at a fire like that. To stare at a fire knowing that we just let someone down we swore we wouldn't. To stay quiet when we should have spoken and said the truth. Most of us know what it's like when someone says something dismissive about faith in a meeting, at a dinner table, in a room full of people whose opinion we value, and we just let it pass. We warm ourselves by the fire and we say nothing. This fire is not just Peter's fire. The thing about failure is that it doesn't stay just in the moment that it happened. Just like lies, failure is something that often follows us or that we carry with us. And Peter carries the weight of that courtyard through the arrest, through the trial, through the crucifixion, through the burial, into the long days after. Even when Mary comes running on Easter morning in the confusion and wonder of an empty tomb somewhere underneath it all, I can't help but believe that Peter is still hearing the sound of that rooster crowing. It often surfaces at unexpected moments. For me, it's when I'm trying to fall asleep. I think, why in 7th grade did I do that? It finds us in those quiet times. And I wonder if part of Peter had simply accepted that this was the end of his story with Jesus. In that time of the arrest and the crucifixion before Easter morning, if he thought his last words about Christ would be, I don't know him. That he'd used up whatever grace was available. That he'd spend the rest of his life known as the one who said, no, I don't know him. Perhaps Peter saw that the door for him was closed and the light was off. To fast forward in the story, going beyond Easter morning, shortly after Jesus rises on Easter, Peter decides he's going fishing. Maybe he doesn't know what else to do. Maybe it's the one thing to him that still makes sense. So he and a couple other disciples go out on a boat, work through the night, and if we know anything about disciples fishing, they don't catch anything, right? Then just as dawn is breaking, someone way out on the shore yells, throw your net over on the other side of the boat. And they do. And if we know anything about fishing on the other side of the boat, the net fills so fast it can barely hold the number of fish. And one of the disciples says, it's the Lord. The two disciples do the sensible thing. They secure their fish, they bring and they row the boat in. But Peter, the same Peter who stood 3 times at the fire and said, I don't know him. That Peter, when he hears it's the Lord and he looks off in the distance, you know what Peter does in John 21? He jumps out of the boat. He dives headfirst into the water and he swims to shore. In that cold, pre-dawn water, he's not thinking about the fish or what he'll say when he gets there. He just swims forward knowing he's swimming towards Christ. And when Peter comes ashore, do you know what he sees next to Jesus? A small charcoal fire. Anthracea. We only have charcoal fire in Scripture in 2 places. These are the 2 places. On that fire being used to cook breakfast, there's fish on it already cooked and bread. When Peter, dripping wet, gets to shore, the fire's ready, it's burning, it's warm, and he goes up to the fire and he finds that it is Jesus, and Jesus already made breakfast. Before Peter could explain himself, before accounting for the courtyard, before Peter could begin the speech, he'd probably been rehearsing. The fire was already lit. The smell of charcoal was already rising off the beach. The welcome had already begun. There's a Motel 6 ad slogan that is older than I thought it was, but some of us probably remember it, where the spokesman Tom Bodett would end the radio and TV commercials the same way. I'm Tom Bodett for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you. It turns out that line was an ad lib in an early radio commercial Tom did, and he pulled it from something that his own mother used to say whenever he came home, that she left the light on for him. That it doesn't matter how late, it doesn't matter what the road was like, come on in, the light is on. So Peter pulls himself up onto that beach, dripping wet and out of breath, and there it is, the charcoal fire, the lights on. The same smell, the same warmth. Jesus is already there. The light is on. But Jesus doesn't pretend that the earlier fire didn't happen. He doesn't forget that Peter denied him 3 times. After breakfast, he turns to Peter and he says, "Simon, do you love me?" Simon Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs." Jesus asks him again, "Simon, do you love me?" And he asks him again a 3rd time. 3 questions, the same question 3 times, the same number as the 3 denials, at the same kind of fire, with the same smell of charcoal. John tells us that Peter was hurt that Jesus asked him a 3rd time. The hurt isn't the point. Jesus isn't trying to cause Peter pain. This is Jesus walking Peter back through the wound, like back through the cross, gently, persistently, not to shame him, but because a wound doesn't heal by being ignored. You return to it carefully with love until it isn't a wound anymore. Grace is not amnesia. Grace says, I know what happened. I was there, but I'm still here now. And I have a question for you. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. So then Jesus says, let's go. There's still work to do. Your story's not over, Peter. Jesus doesn't bench him. He doesn't say, given everything, sit this one out. He says, feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. You know, in the same time, perhaps it's easy to forget about the 2 disciples that caught the fish and brought the fish ashore. And what's interesting is Jesus tells them to bring some of their fish. Not that he necessarily needs them for the breakfast. The fish was already on the fire. It was ready. He didn't need what they caught to prepare for them, but he asked for them to bring what they had. Because grace doesn't just forgive us and then set us aside. Grace puts us back to work. It says your failure is not the last word about what you're capable of. If you've been watching the bar on the bulletin, this one right here, with a sharp eye, you may have caught the color slowly changing each week, getting lighter, with the word first becoming visible easily to my eyes today, saying toward the dawn. This sermon series we have heading towards Easter, the dawn on Easter morning. Today's passage is maybe the hardest one we've visited so far, with Peter at the fire, with the rooster crowing, with the smell of smoke and failure in the cold night air. But dawn doesn't only come on Easter morning abstractly. Dawn comes also on a cold beach. Just as the light is breaking where a fire's already burning, where breakfast is already made, and the one we thought we lost our chance with is standing there with a question. Do you love me? Because whatever fire we've been standing at, whatever we've said or left unsaid, whatever we've walked away from, that fire on that beach was already burning before Peter's feet hit the sand. The welcome was already prepared. The smell of the charcoal already carrying across the water. Know this morning that that fire still burns. That the light is still on. Perhaps this is our moment to say, Jesus, we love you, and we will take care of your sheep. Because this is not where the story ends in our world. Amen. Amen.